Former wrestler who never told his many sexual partners he's HIV positive.
Andre Davis apologized in court right after receiving his sentence.
And I truly am sorry for my actions.
One of Davis's victims, who did not wish to be identified, read a statement in court today.
I watched you sit through this entire trial with a smile on your face, and that shows just how selfish, hateful, and cold-hearted you are. Andre, you deserve everything that's happening to you, and I pray God has mercy on your soul.
Robin, he got 32 years in prison. Is that right? Is it too tough?
I think it's unfair. I think that the law itself is problematic. I mean, what it does is it criminalizes HIV. It criminalizes a disease. And I think that it sets a dangerous precedent for criminalizing, let's say, women who may have children and have sex without a condom, if they know the partner is HIV positive, for example. I mean, it could work both ways. I mean, my concern is that we have all these cases of medical violence in some ways, institutionalized violence, whether it's the syphilis studies in Guatemala and Tuskegee or other kinds of cases like that, and no one's prosecuted. And so here's this guy, another African-American male, who, what he did, I think, is maybe morally reprehensible, but the question is it really illegal, and does it set a precedent for criminalizing anyone who's HIV positive?
That's interesting. And look, then if you can do it for HIV, can you do it for syphilis, chlamydia, crabs? I don't know, how far can it go? On the other hand, I'm not sure I disagree with him being prosecuted here. Manju, you're a lawyer. What do you think?
Well, I think it, is potentially a case of a solution looking for a problem. I mean, how many cases in Ohio do you have where individuals have failed to disclose their HIV status? In just one of the neighboring states in Iowa, there were apparently, before this law was enacted, only 32 cases. It's almost the same really as the voter fraud that the Republicans are claiming. There's almost no evidence of it, and yet they're passing all these laws. So I wonder in this case, to me the bigger issue, Cenk, is about the fact that more than half of African American males in this country without a high school diploma go to prison at some point or the other. I wonder if we would have had the same thing happen if Andre Davis were not African American. Would we still have this kind of sentence? Would we have 32 years behind bars? And then, of course, the bigger issue, too, of how many people we're imprisoning overall. This is just a nation now where we are essentially putting hundreds of thousands of people, millions, right? 6 million people behind bars right now.
13% of African-American males have entered the prison system in some way, which is outrageous. And if you notice, one of the victims, they didn't show her face, but they showed her hands. She was white. Has that been relevant in the past? Absolutely. But, Patrick, I mean, let's say I sleep with a woman, she doesn't tell me she's got HIV, and then I get HIV, and, in the past it was a death sentence. Luckily, right now, it still kills people, no question about it. You might be able to survive. I would be beyond pissed. I might think it's criminal.
Well, yeah, and the thing is she will go to prison because, assuming it's against the law, because we live in a nation of laws. And when you violate the law in this country, you go to jail. That's just how it works. So, like, for example, when Citigroup created these fraudulent mortgage securities and knew that they were fraudulent and worthless, and then sold them to their customers and then secretly shorted them, which was, massive fraud. All of those executives went to prison, is my understanding. And
maybe if they were black.
And then when the Bush administration ordered, torture and unlawful detention of citizens, including American citizens, in violation of federal law and international law, all of those Bush administration officials, including the vice president, they went to prison, right? Because we live in a nation where if you break the law, you are punished. And so it's too bad for Andre Davis and too bad for this woman who you gave sweet love to, but that's the country we live in,
and
it or not.
And I assure you, it would have been sweet.
I'm sure you did a great job.
So, look, I hear you guys, and God, the injustice grows every day. the CIA officer Kirikow who exposed the waterboarding, now being tried under the Espionage Act.
Right.
But the guys who did the waterboarding, not tried at all.
Right.
You do the torture, you're fine. The guy who destroyed the tapes, 92 tapes destroyed, wildly illegal, no prosecution. You expose it, you're going to jail.
The guys in Haditha who just like totally smoked like 24 women and children and then, you know, covered it over. Like they just got sentenced the other day to.
But you got to be fair.
Yeah.
They could get up to 3 months, and that guy goes down back to private.
That's a good point.
Wow.
No, that is a good point. And no, absolutely. And he may have to clean up to 1/4 of one latrine.
so we got him, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. Now, having said that, guys, I hear you guys on all those points. But none of you think that it should. I mean, look at all the countries that criminalize it in some ways. 34 states here in the U.S., and then you got Canada, UK, Germany, Russia, Australia, New Zealand, all criminalizing this act. I don't think it's crazy to criminalize it. I think, you know, especially when HIV used to be a death sentence. Luckily, it's not as much anymore.
Right.
But somebody gives you a disease without telling you, without a condom, without notice. I think it is criminal.
Yeah, but it doesn't. This is not to condone the behavior at all. In fact, it is to say that it opens up the door for a lot of possible ways of repressing people and controlling sexuality. In other words, it opens up the door for the invasion of people's private lives. What I think is more important is balancing the cost of sending him to prison for 32 years, which is about $28,000 to $35,000 a year. Versus money that can go into these questions of solving, really eliminating HIV/AIDS, dealing with health crises. In other words, investing in transforming the culture that we're in. To me, seems to be sort of more urgent.
And I hear you that the punishment certainly could be disproportionate. We don't even know if any of the women actually got infected.
Right.
But Manju, if it happened to you, would you want the prosecution to do something?
Right. Well, I mean, I don't even have to think of it happening to me as so much as, the issue is actually a very real one in South Asia, which is that routinely South Asian women have found themselves being HIV positive because of their partners who travel, they're truck drivers, they have other professions where they do use prostitutes and sex workers pretty regularly, and then they don't disclose it to their wives, and then the women find themselves, through essentially no fault of their own, being HIV positive. So I do think, I would agree with you that in terms of, gender issues, this can be seen as a very positive thing.
Generally speaking, in those situations, is it legal or is it illegal, or does it vary by the nation in South Asia?
You mean
what you just described? No, not even prostitution. In India, for example, what you just described, like, say one of those, truck drivers knew that he had contracted HIV and slept with a prostitute. Like in India, for example, is he then liable for criminal prosecution?
Yeah, I think that he actually is. So, and the problem there too is the gender issues that compound this, which is, the way people view women and sex, and then they immediately put blame on the woman for being HIV positive in a way that they wouldn't on her male counterpart.
Right, and like in some countries it's out of control. In Saudi Arabia there was a case, woman gets raped, and she gets pregnant, and they say, well, we know you had sex outside of marriage, so you're going to jail. Right. But according to the Quran, you need 4 witnesses to put the guy away. You don't have 4 witnesses, he's free to go, you're in jail, which is insanity, right? Yeah. And by the way, what is it about truck drivers? Whenever it's always a story about truck drivers, obviously they had to get whores. Is that like part of the job when you sign up for truck driver? Every story's like that. Yeah. All right, let me get a final tally here. Would you have put him in jail at all or free to go? Which way?
That's hard because I don't think jail time, but yet at the same time something else has to happen. But I'm not sure I would give him jail time.
So I'm going to go with no for you. Okay,
yeah.
Manju.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think would certainly not have that heavy a sentence. Yeah. I think that's just ridiculous and outrageous. So, can I say I'm not sure?
No, unacceptable. We will come back to you. Patrick.
Put me down for yes.
Okay.
But, okay, easy.
Okay.
But not 35 years.
Yeah. The sentence we all agree on.
Something between 35 years and Hadith, a guy who got, 2 hours and.
Yeah. So I think paying reparations, paying reparations would be one way. And also there's a way in which he needs, like, how you have sex offenders? And you have, despite the fact that there's a question about the law and consent, because there's consensual sex, but it's the lack of disclosure. But there's a way in which maybe he might have a list of sex offenders. Maybe he might be put on a list.
Right.
But the jail time just seems a little bit draconian, given the fact that if it's true that he's a sex addict, there may be some other issues.
But it's not informed consent, actually.
Right, it's not informed.
Right.
It's not informed consent.
Right.
And then that raises a lot of issues, because I think if we're going to do it for HIV, you got to do it for everything.
No, I draw the line on HIV because it's life-threatening. I give him prison time. Nowhere near 32 years, and definitely the Haditha guy gets more prison time.
Right.
That's my analysis.
Out of all of this, I draw the line at really visiting Cincinnati just in general.